Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our SRC One-on-One Chat on the private sector as a partner in Sustainable Development Goal Achievement in the Caribbean. My name is Alicia Nicholls, trade researcher with the Shrida Franfal Center for International Trade Law Policy and Services of the University of the West Indies here in Barbados. It is indeed my honor and pleasure to have as my distinguished guest today, Mr. Deodat Maharaj, Executive Director of the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Mr. Maharaj is a trade and development expert who has spent many years working on the areas of trade, sustainable development, private sector development, including as Deputy Secretary General at the Commonwealth Secretariat. As of February 2021, he heads Caribbean Export, a regional trade and investment promotion agency mandated to enhance the competitiveness of CARIFORUM SMEs and promote trade and investment regionally and internationally. So Deodat, welcome. It is indeed a pleasure to have you today.
Alicia, good morning, and good morning to your viewers and listeners over the World Wide Web. A pleasant good morning, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here, and as always, so nice to engage with you.
Likewise, Deodat. So our first topic that we'll discuss, for those audience members who might be unfamiliar, what are the Sustainable Development Goals, and why are these goals something that Caribbean countries will sign on to and work towards?
Yeah, I think the global community is at a critical crossroads, Alicia. We have a world where, like at the national level in many countries, you have super wealthy countries and you have other countries that are struggling. We see the struggles that we are facing right here in the Caribbean as a consequence of COVID-19. What the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, are about, it's the international community coming together and saying, look, enough is enough. Let us set ambitious goals and targets. Let us put mechanisms in place so we can do practical and concrete things to make this world of ours a better place. So, for example, it can't be right in this world where we have super rich countries that we have hundreds of millions of people who are poor. It can't be right in an era where mass companies are making billions of dollars and people in many countries of the world can't get food to eat. It can't be right as well where you have increased inequalities globally. And therefore, the international community came together to establish and to set these goals, these 17 sustainable goals, to deal with the major challenges of our times. Goal number 1, for example, no poverty, bringing an end to poverty. Goal number 2, very practical, very concrete, and can resonate across the Caribbean, zero hunger, bringing down hunger to zero. Goal number 8, how do people, move on, and how do they develop sustainable livelihoods? Is by having decent work and opportunities. Goal number 8. And how do you achieve all this? Because the financing is a big issue, including for us here in the Caribbean. And it's about building partnerships to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, they're not some esoteric, abstract, conceptual notion of what we want to do, but they are quite practical, concrete, and they resonate and they have high relevance across the Caribbean as well. And that is precisely why global leaders and countries across this globe of ours signed on to the SDGs, because if the SDGs are achieved, this world of ours will be a much better place.
Thank you so much for that very succinct yet comprehensive overview, Deodat, and showing the importance, not just to the fact that these goals are needed, but they're germane to our day-to-day existence in the Caribbean. And you touched on something very key, which is the huge SDG financing gap that many developing countries, including us here in the Caribbean, are facing, and the fact that we are lagging on several of the SDG indicators. So what role do you see the local and foreign private sectors playing in contributing not just the SDG achievement, but also in terms of financing for these goals?
Yeah, well, the reality that we face, right, is that there has been a costing associated with the SDGs. And it's estimated that the SDGs will cost between 5 to 7 trillion United States dollars. For developing countries, the bill is about 2.5 to 2.7 trillion United States dollars. For us in the Caribbean, of course, it's going to be much less. But here in the Caribbean, we are reeling from the impact of COVID-19. We are reeling from the impact of natural disasters, as we saw in 2017 with Hurricanes Irma and Maria. So we continue to be vulnerable to external shocks. We are amongst the most highly indebted region on the planet, as well as being amongst the most highly climate vulnerable region on the planet. And to add to all of this complex mix, Alicia, we are one of the most food insecure regions on the planet as well. And therefore, given the challenges that we face, including the acute fiscal constraints faced by governments across the region, what we know for sure is government can't foot the bill to achieve the SDGs or to build a resilient Caribbean. That we know, that's a given, because we have high levels of debt. Governments already account for a lot of employment in the region because they pay for public sector salaries. And therefore, going forward, what's the missing link? Where are we going to get this financing? So governments don't have the resources, we know one. Secondly, we are already highly indebted, so we can't borrow more money to become even, increasingly indebted. So that is something that we can't really do, in a very liberal manner. Thirdly, our countries are middle high income countries, and therefore we are ineligible for overseas development assistance like many least developed countries. So we can't get ODA on a scale that could help us achieve the SDGs or help us achieve a resilient Caribbean. Therefore, the answer has to be, to get this precious financing, it has to come from the private sector. So A, stimulating regional investment, and B, attracting foreign direct investment. So let's look at a very concrete issue. Being the most climate vulnerable region, or one of the most climate vulnerable regions on the planet, we need to go into new technologies. We need to build, to embark on climate action, Alicia. And therefore, we need to go into renewables. To go into renewables on the scale that is required, we don't have the resources at a national level. And that is why we need foreign direct investment. And that is where Caribbean Export comes in. Because what we are doing, we are providing a lot of support to firms at the national level to reduce or to improve energy efficiency, one. And in terms of our investment promotion work, one of the priority areas is to attract foreign direct investment to our region to help transition to a green, or what I call a new economy. But it's not only about for your viewers, Alicia, right? And people who are listening to your program, it's this green economy transition is not, again, some abstract concept. We have to do it. But the big issue, the bottom line, right? They say, Deodat, what are you working on at Caribbean Export? What is your priority? I say my priority is really three things. One is to create jobs. Two, create jobs. Three, to create jobs. We need to create good jobs for our people so they can take care of themselves and their families. So back to the green economy transition. The Inter-American Development Bank and the International Labour Organization did a study, and the study showed, right, and provided evidence that transition to a green economy will create an additional 400,000 jobs in our region. And that is so essential for us as we continue to reel from the COVID-19 pandemic. So when I think about the SDGs and I think about the private sector, I think about foreign direct investment, but critically and concretely, it's about creating jobs for Barbadian people, it's creating jobs for Caribbean people, but not just jobs that can help people eke out a living, but decent jobs that they can take care of themselves and their families. And that is why business has to play an important and central leadership role as we seek to achieve the SDGs and as we seek to create and forge a partnership to build a resilient Caribbean.
Thank you so much for that, Deodat. And you are so indeed right. We do need jobs. And most young people will say that that's probably one of the biggest things in the region for them right now, the need for a job that not only pays a decent wage but utilizes their skills. And I agree with you that the private sector does have an important role to play. So you talked a bit about the work that Caribbean Export is doing in terms of investment promotion, in terms of the private sector. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges or impediments for Caribbean countries to effectively harness the private sector as a development partner? How can we get the private sector to invest and to create these jobs that we so desperately need for our economies?
Yeah. Well, the first things first, right? I like the idea of that you touched and you focused on financing at the very outset. First and foremost, we need to create an environment for capital to flow freely across our Caribbean. So in this day and age, we don't have a regional stock exchange. We need to give, Alicia, stakeholders, whether you're a taxi driver in Bridgetown, you're a farmer in St. Lucie, you're a public servant, working here in Barbados or across the Caribbean, and you have some small savings, we want to give you the opportunity. You should be given the opportunity to invest in a company across the Caribbean or anywhere in the Caribbean. So we are not creating that environment for a regional stock exchange. I think that a regional investment policy is one, and secondly, a regional stock exchange. So those, to my mind, are really important and big issues as we seek to build a resilient Caribbean, because we can't get the financing if we don't have that environment for people to invest across the Caribbean. That's A. But B, the World Bank, they do this ease of doing business report. And Alicia, is quite sad where we are in the Caribbean. As you would know, with the exception of Jamaica and St. Lucia, the rest of our Caribbean countries are in the bottom half of 200 countries globally. The Caribbean is still a very difficult place to do business. And if it's a difficult place to do business, we are not going to get the investors to invest in the green economy to create this 400,000 jobs that I spoke about. So we really have to focus on improving the ease of doing business. When I think about, people talk about the challenges, Alicia, how difficult it is to change the regulatory environment and to improve the ease of doing business. But I think about Mauritius, a country that I have visited, and I like what they have done. Mauritius, I think, in the last World Bank Ease of Doing Business report, they are 12th or 13th in the world, higher than Germany, higher than Australia, higher than Spain, higher than Portugal. And Mauritius is a small island developing state, more remote in terms of location than us here in the Caribbean. But they are quite visionary, and they blend action with vision to realize and achieve goals. And therefore, to my mind, we have to look to practical and concrete examples of success stories like Mauritius, see what they have done and try and replicate what they have done. But we really need to improve the ease of doing business in the Caribbean so people can open a company and register a company in a matter of 24, 48 hours, not 3 months. If a foreign investor is interested in coming to the Caribbean, we must have a genuine one-stop, non-stop shop. Whether it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or 4 o'clock in the morning, we need to have that environment where people are working. Because how the world is, Alicia, the world is that we need to have like one-stop, non-stop shops. So if someone from South Africa or someone from India or Vietnam, we're talking about Asia and Africa, we need to work regardless of time differences. But we are still stuck in this mentality that's 8 to 4 Caribbean time. But the globe is a village, and the globe is hyper competitive, Alicia. So we have to compete with the best and the brightest and the fastest moving countries on the planet. And if we do the same old, obviously we're not going to get a different outcome. So we need to move, I think, with greater alacrity going forward.
Very well said. And I'm sure many in our business sector across the Caribbean would agree with you wholeheartedly that we have to do more in terms of improving ease of doing business. And now that you've touched on that, I want us to shift a bit towards the diaspora, because while you were at the Commonwealth, the Commonwealth had authored two very interesting studies looking at diaspora investments, and they could have been more in case I might have missed them. And one of the things that has been found in some of these studies, not just by the Commonwealth, but the World Bank, etc., is the difficulty in doing business. There's an interest by the diaspora in wanting to contribute to development in the region, but then there's still these impediments. So my question for you would be, what role can the diaspora play in helping their home states here in the region achieve the SDGs? And is there a role for Caribbean Export in facilitating greater diaspora engagement as a development actor?
Okay, but let's talk about the diaspora in terms of some data first, Alicia, right? So the diaspora, they send money. So we have people who have families in the US, Canada, Europe, or elsewhere. They work and they send money to the Caribbean. We call it remittances, right? In terms of remittances, where I'm from, Trinidad and Tobago, you would think we don't get a lot of money in remittances, but it's like 190 million US annually. Guyana would get about 400 million United States dollars annually in remittances. Jamaica is close to 2 billion US dollars in remittances. Haiti is a bit over 2 billion United States dollars in remittances. So we are getting remittances. The issue, Alicia, with the diaspora is that unlike Asia, remittances to the Caribbean, they are consumption oriented. So people are sending money for weddings, funerals, these things we understand, clothes in a barrel, you know, sending sneakers, whatever, okay? But the issue is that we haven't engaged as a Caribbean with our diaspora to talk about investment. We want to partner with you, not only in terms of sending money for consumption, but medium and longer term investment. That's one. The second aspect about the diaspora is that our diaspora, it's a highly successful diaspora. They are captains of industry, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I mean, our Caribbean people work hard and we do quite well. And when we think about the diaspora, we think only about those who are first generation, second to third generation Caribbean people, let us say in New York, for example. But what we don't think about, we discount, Alicia, we discount the networks. So when I think about the diaspora, I think about our Caribbean brothers and sisters globally, but I also think about the incredible networks that they have, who may not necessarily be members of the diaspora, but that's fine. So the issues that we need to leverage, not only the diaspora in terms of being investors in our future, a common Caribbean future, but also to leverage the networks that they have. And that work we are not doing, I think, sufficiently. In some cases, we are not doing at all. Secondly, with respect to the diaspora, Alicia, we need to identify specific opportunities for them. Are we talking about small scale opportunities? Are we talking about larger scale opportunities? Are we talking about green economy transition? Are we talking about leveraging the expertise? Because it's not only about money, Alicia. It's about their networks and the expertise that they have and the service that they can render to us in the Caribbean. So as a region where financing is so vital, where we are so highly indebted, we need to look at all possible options. And nobody, quite frankly, is going to write us a check for $500 million or $1 billion and say, Caribbean, you take this money and you do whatever you wish. So we have to be innovative and we have to link and connect with our diaspora accordingly as a partner to build a bright and prosperous Caribbean for all of us, including them, because they are not some distant people out there coming to Barbados or going to Trinidad for Christmas or a vacation. They are partners and stakeholders in our development. And that's how we need to communicate and engage with our diaspora. I hope I'm clear in terms of my views on this issue because it's quite important.
Oh, no, very clear. And for those listeners as well, I should point out that you were part of the diaspora and still are to some extent. And you're bringing your wealth of knowledge and experience and networks, etc., to help with Caribbean development. So you are a good example, not to put you on the spot, but you're a good example of this diaspora engagement that we need.
Yeah, we all need to chip in because it's Alicia, the Caribbean. I'm concerned. We are living at a time of immense challenge, but a time of immense opportunity. And we have a unique moment, you know, to seize the day, if you wish, if you can say it along those lines, to advance a transformational agenda. But if we don't do that, Alicia, we risk being left behind. And you know, the SDGs, one of the slogans is leaving no one behind. So for us in the Caribbean, if we don't seize the moment now and press that reset button on our development agenda, we risk, right, being left behind. Because when you look at the data in terms of other small island developing states region, they're outperforming us. When you look at the LDCs, the least developed countries, they're doing better than us. I mean, I'm a big fan of Africa. My first posting with the UN, my last posting with the UN was in Africa, so I'm a big fan. You know, I have a lot of friends on the continent, and I follow developments closely. And when I think about Africa, I think about rising Africa, and they're doing so well. And we risk being left behind. And it's not only being left behind, Alicia, it's being left out. But I'm an optimist, right? And therefore, we have to take advantage of this opportunity and to really advance and build a resilient Caribbean and achieve the SDGs. Business has to play an important leadership role. Governments simply don't have the resources to generate the employment, to pay for hospital and education and all those, you know, immense costs that we have to pay for to ensure that our people have a good quality of life. And that is why we must commit to supporting business so their success is our success. And at the end of the day, Alicia, is about your listeners out there because it resonates with them. The importance of getting jobs so they can take care of themselves and their families. 60% of our people are around under the age of 25, young people. So we have to give hope and we have to give opportunity to them because they are innovative and they are creative and they can create their own path. But we have to give them that opportunity and to create that environment. And the environment, we need to do a lot of work, Alicia.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And so you would have mentioned, so we're transitioning a bit now from the diaspora, and you would have spoken towards several of the SDGs that you thought were particularly important. So those dealing with renewable energy, etc. But the thing with the SDGs and some of the SDG sectors is that not all of them are seen by the private sector as lucrative areas for investing. So do you see blended finance as a viable option to help encourage private sector investment, particularly in some of those SDG sectors that might not necessarily be seen as very commercially attractive to the private sector?
Yeah, well, I think the SDGs across the board, they provide opportunities for the private sector. When we look at SDG 1, no poverty, is about creating jobs and opportunities. SDG 2, zero hunger. We are the most food insecure region on the planet. So how do we embrace technology to go into agriculture where business can earn a good income and we can improve our food security is another area of opportunity, right? So when we think about climate change, SDG 13 and advancing climate action, Alicia, transition to a green economy would provide immense opportunities to business. But I agree with you because the issue of finance, as we stated from the very beginning of this interview, is really important for the Caribbean. We are highly indebted. Governments, they have limited fiscal space. We are ineligible to overseas development assistance by and large. And therefore, in terms of financing, we have to look at every possible opportunity. And blended financing offers a unique opportunity for us in the Caribbean once we can have the right partnerships, okay? And to bring together a consortium of investors or financiers to advance a particular goal. So blended financing, to my mind, is vital because when we look at the financing gap for the SDGs, we said at the beginning that the cost of the SDGs is between 5 to 7 trillion US dollars. For developing countries, it's between 2.5 to around 2.7 trillion United States dollars. And therefore, what we know is countries can't borrow that huge amount of money, one. Secondly, they're not generating the resources locally, and therefore blended financing is critical. But I want to re-emphasize the point that whereas blended financing is important, so Alicia, is a regional stock exchange where we give Caribbean people the opportunity to invest in our common future, in our common destiny. And I do hope that going forward, we have a new Secretary General who will be assuming office in August. And I do hope that the new SG would be focusing on this as an important priority. Because when we establish a regional stock exchange, we're also sending a strong message globally that this is the Caribbean. This is a place for you to come and invest. This is a place for you to do business. Because the challenge that we face is that oftentimes, individually, our jurisdictions are too small to provide the scale that is required to attract the bigger investors. That's why we at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, as a key part of our investment strategy and support in the area of investment promotion, we have been working with the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies to identify areas where companies can come and invest in multiple jurisdictions in priority areas, green economy transition, technology and agriculture, to name a second one, because we need to offer the scale. And that is why this regional investment policy and why a regional stock exchange, it's absolutely critical, because blended financing is important. Foreign direct investment is also important, Alicia, but the world is looking, right, to see what are we doing for ourselves? And the message has to be, as a Caribbean with a vision to achieve a resilient Caribbean, okay, where people can have wealth and have opportunities and good jobs, critically, we are doing everything possible to stand on our own 2 feet. That is absolutely important. That's the message we need to convey.
A very sage and timely message. So Deodat, thank you so much. Time really flies quickly when you're having a really great conversation. I do hope that we could do one of these one-on-one chats again at some point. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for our SRC One-on-One Chat with Mr. Deodat Maharaj, where he shared with us not just his very important insights on the SDGs and the role of the private sector, but also the very critical role that Caribbean export is playing in terms of helping the region to meet the SDGs and in developing the private sector. So if there are any concluding thoughts, Deodat?
No, just keep up the great work, Alicia. A pleasure to engage with you, and thank you so much, and look forward to speaking with you again.
Perfect. Until our next SRC One-on-One Chat, have a great day.